There's a lot of talk about leveling up, glowing up, desirability, weight loss, all of those things. But there are things that we are not saying. And my hope is to say all of those things in this video. I would like to talk about body privilege. This is something that most Black women don't talk about, but I do think it exists. So my question is, can a Black woman who, let's just say, looks quote unquote average, can this average Black woman have Halle Berry level pretty privilege within the Black community by way of altering her body? So in other words, can a Black woman who looks, so to speak, average, many of us are just average looking women, right? Can this average looking woman attain pretty privilege by way of changing her body to fit whatever the dominant standard is at that time? Now, I am in no way saying that Black women don't have pretty privilege. Many of us have been privy to the fact that pretty privilege is actually rooted, oftentimes, in fat phobia, rooted in racism, rooted in featureism, rooted in colorism, and rooted in texturism. Meaning, it is very hard for a average everyday Black woman to have the level of pretty privilege that will afford her the things in society that, say, a Lori Harvey or a Sierra is getting, right? So in no way am I saying that Black women aren't pretty or beautiful. I, of course, believe that Black women are the gold standard. A little biased there, but I do believe that. Black people have had to learn to survive and in some ways learn to thrive in the worst of circumstances. So as a result, many of us have created our own standards within our communities. And today I'm talking specifically about beauty standards, but we have created many different standards, again, within our community. And I want to talk about the ways in which Black women who are deemed as average by society, so in the external society, how those same women can have a higher level of currency, so to speak, within the Black community. Now, when I say within the Black community, I don't just mean in urban areas. I also mean on Instagram, right? Like in any Black space. It could be Black YouTube, it could be Instagram, Facebook. It could be any platform where Black people are congregating. And so, and a lot of what I'm going to say involves a lot of questions. So one, do you all believe in body privilege? Like, is that a thing? Have you heard of it? And comment below if you have, anything to share about body privilege, again, within the Black community. Also, when it comes to this, what I'm calling the Black currency of body privilege, or in other words, the Black card, does this currency have the same value in the Black community that it has in other communities? So for example, if a woman, say for example, gets a BBL and she has this massive size butt, we know that in the Black community, that is a hot commodity, right? Like, she will have some currency there, but does that currency then translate over to other communities? If this same woman walked into a corporate office filled with white people, would she still have the same, privileges, the same privileges afforded to her? Or would it actually have the opposite and reverse effect? Would she then be in some way disregarded or perceived as maybe, not having as much influence and power and agency because of the way her body looks? So this is something that is actually a very fascinating subject to me, and based on my research, I have not been able to find much on it, at least not here on YouTube or on Google, and so I thought I would make a video about it. So do you all think that the average Black woman benefits from the same pretty privilege that everyone on TikTok and, the same pretty privilege that folks were talking about maybe might have been a couple years ago, and making lots of videos and commentary about pretty privilege. Does it exist? Does it not exist? I made a video about the BBL epidemic, and I think we all know that there was, and maybe still is, a BBL, meaning Brazilian butt lift, meaning women getting curvier butts. That was an epidemic. I always think about why was there never a nose job epidemic in the Black community amongst Black women? Because many of us have, our noses are not necessarily the noses that are praised in society. And we saw this with Ari Lennox, singer Ari Lennox, who, on IG Live cried about the backlash that she was receiving regarding her features, specifically her nose. So why wasn't there a nose job epidemic? Why was there never like a skin lightening epidemic? We talk. I think colorism is something that people have been more open about. Openly, dark-skinned women openly talking about their challenges with being dark. Light-skinned women admitting that, hey, this does exist, and I acknowledge that colorism is a thing, but there was never a skin lightening epidemic. Now, maybe those things do happen in other parts of the world, in Africa and things like that. But here in the United States, I don't ever remember there being a time where so many droves of Black women were going out lightening their skin. Yes, it does happen, right? Like, we know that it happened, and it is happening, but it's not an epidemic. There has not been a lip filler epidemic amongst Black women. There are Black women who do not have full lips. They don't. But again, I have never heard of it being like a big, massive droves of Black women going and getting all this lip filler, even though we know Black women do that. So when I think about, why was there a BBL epidemic? Like, why was this the thing out of all the procedures, that Black women gravitated toward? It leads me to this conclusion of body privilege and the ways in which a Black woman has the ability to have more power, more agency within, and again, within her own community, more so specifically. And again, not just when I say the Black community, yes, with, in social situations, but also on a place like Instagram. And we see it with a lot of the Instagram influencers having certain body types, even if they are smaller women, even if they are like I'll use, say, like even Ashanti as an example, or someone like Megan Good, who is not, they are not large women, but they are very curvy women. And, I think the narrative around them is that they look very natural, and they probably could be, but we don't really know, right? Because not everybody gets work done to look drastic. Like, some people get work done to just look modest and regular and normal. So we really don't know if they've done anything because of the racist roots of pretty privilege that many Black women will not have access to. And again, not because they are not pretty or beautiful, but because of societal standards of who gets to fit in the very narrow box of pretty, right? Like, who gets to fit in that box? So because for the average Black woman, many of us, it may not be attainable, even if we have the quote unquote facial features, if our bodies are not a certain way. There's so many boxes that we would need to check to be part of that, right? So have we, as a result, created body privilege within our community that gives us the ability to essentially have our own standards of beauty, and even if those standards are primarily acknowledged by Black men, for many Black women, that may be our pretty privilege. And I think about someone like Kim Kardashian, and actually the Kardashians in general, who have access to this Black currency of body privilege by way of surgery, and how, sort of the sentiment that Black women have around that. It's rare for me to hear a Black woman, I guess, sort of praise the Kardashians' body, but I think there's always this acknowledgement of like sort of feeling like they hijacked something, or there's like an appropriation there. And so the resentment, or sort of the is a little bit off-putting to know that something within the Black community that we for so many years have used as currency, again meaning this idea of body privilege, that other communities can then come in and access that and hijack that and start to do the same thing to also, some would argue, hijack our men as well. So that to me is also very interesting too, this idea of Black currency leaving the Black community, you know what I mean? And like being, I guess, repurposed within white communities and other communities, and sort of the conversation that can come into play when Black women see that happening. Very, very interesting. So can Black women increase their value and become more desirable by getting their body done? We're talking about bodies. We know that women in general increase, so to speak, their societal value by doing things such as putting on makeup, getting their lashes done, getting their eyebrows done, their hair, various things like that. Would you say that a woman can also increase her value, a Black woman, increase her value specifically by getting her body done? So say this woman has no makeup on, her hair is, just whatever, nothing too special, no lashes, no veneers, just everything else, I guess, is just regular. But she has this amazing body. How is that perceived societally, from a societal standpoint, and how is that perceived in the Black community? If you think about things like a facelift, like if you even just saying the word, I mean, it sounds so invasive, but of course, people of other communities, non-Black people especially, as they age, and of course we're talking class here, so folks who can afford this, like it's almost like a facelift for, say, an older white woman. A BBL might be the equivalent to that for a younger or middle-aged Black woman. I don't hear too many Black women or people talking about, oh, one day I want to get a facelift, or, and we know that the sentiment is like Black doesn't crack, which, that might be true externally, but facelifts, when we talk about, when you hear other people talk about a facelift, specifically white people, it's, it seems almost like a foreign concept to a Black woman can't even imagine. Why would I want somebody to literally cut my face and pull it back and then sew it back together? But I mean, truth be told, white women or women who get, or not even women, people who get facelifts may think the same thing about someone getting a BBL. Why would I want fat taken from one area and injected into my butt and this and this and that? So, I just think it's interesting when you think about the procedures that we gravitate to. Now, I do want to say something about like this idea of natural body privilege, because I don't think that body privilege is only attained via surgery. I mean, of course, Black people exercise, we diet, we lose weight, whether it's naturally or via bariatric surgery. There's all the different groups. I think there's like a group called Black Women Losing Weight, where you get to see the transformations. And so I do think that, Black women attain this body privilege in different ways. It's not like the only way to attain it is through surgery. But there are things associated with, so even if you look at weight loss, and I talked about this in my other video, if a Black woman loses a ton of weight and has a lot of loose skin, I would argue that that Black woman is still not utilizing the social or the capital of this Black currency that I'm speaking about within her own community. I don't believe that having a ton of loose skin, especially if it's visible, is something that will allow a woman to attain privileges. That woman would then have to go, in many cases, attain surgery, plastic surgery, to fix the loose skin. Um, so yeah, so it's sometimes it's not as it really comes down to, you know, however a woman is going to attain this body privilege. I guess maybe the sad part is that the end result, there's certain end results, and we all know when we see the Instagram influencers, we see the quote unquote baddies, like what that looks like. And whether you get bariatric surgery and then get plastic surgery, whether you are skinny and you get a BBL, whatever it is you have to do, the end result kind of just needs to look the way that needs to look a certain way for that body privilege to really take effect. So in other words, for that currency to really be utilized. So what can this body currency buy you, and how far can it really take you? You know, and I think what I'm seeing now is, you know, there's a lot of videos, not a lot, but there are videos that are called "I Regret My BBL." So there are women starting to speak out, you know, years later after doing some of these procedures, and sort of talking about some of their regrets. Now, the funny thing about the "I Regret My BBL" video is that they usually always end in the woman saying that she actually doesn't regret her BBL. So that's a little clickbaity. It's like, okay, but now they may regret the complications that came with the BBL, or they may regret, you know, certain aspects, or the fact that they have to get a round two or whatever it is. But I don't think I've ever heard a woman flat out say, my big butt has, you know, decreased the quality of my life. I have not heard a Black woman say that. And I think that feeds into my narrative, is that although, yes, the BBL may have brought some complications and things like that, but it also brought a level of power, a level of agency, that maybe allowed that woman to climb the hierarchy of pretty privilege a lot more than they otherwise would have. Again, this is within the Black community. So that to me is fascinating. And keep in mind too that the medical industry regulates a lot of the content that we see here online. So a lot of the content on YouTube, you know, the medical industry regulates that. So there might be a lot of women out there who truly do regret their BBLs, or in other words, their Brazilian butt lift surgeries. But that might not be something that has been made public because of the regulation standards about in terms of what you're able to freely speak about regarding surgery and the medical field. So just keep that in mind. Just because you're not seeing a video about someone regretting their, like a real regret my BBL video, just because you don't see that doesn't mean it's not happening. It's just a lot of it is women are, one, ashamed sometimes and don't talk about it, or two, that content, even if it is posted online, it is removed because of the regulations and the rules around what you're able to say on the internet, specifically on a platform like YouTube. Is the satisfaction that Black women get from body privilege, is it sustainable? You know, is it something that will stand the test of time? If you have body privilege, you know, how long will that body privilege be relevant? You know, we know our bodies are constantly changing. What does one do to have to maintain the body privilege? And I see it very similar to pretty privilege as well. I mean, you're not always going to look the way we look today. We won't even look like this necessarily next year, you know, even if it's a very small change, you know, and of course 10 years from now or 20 years from now, you know. So what does this mean long term if it is true that Black women have body privilege? And you know, how does the quality of life change for Black women if they're able to attain body privilege? And then what about women who just cannot attain this? You know, I appreciate one of my viewers who commented on being very thin and how it can be very challenging for a woman who just cannot gain weight. So, because if you cannot gain weight, you actually cannot even get a BBL, you know. And so that is what led a lot of women down the road of Black market injections, is, you know, oftentimes women who either cannot afford to get, plastic surgery from someone who is, board certified or licensed or whatever. But then also women who just can't gain weight. It's very difficult for them to put on weight, and therefore they cannot get the surgery. So what does it mean for a Black woman who will never have this level of currency, so to speak, within the community? And how does she then navigate this, right? I mean, that is a very, we have to be honest. We have to be honest about the fact that people judge you on how you look. People will treat you differently based on how you look. I am no way an advocate for surgery, but I do understand, as I said in previous videos, why people choose this route, because of the societal pressures being so much, and also knowing what you can get if your body looks this way, if your face looks this way. Now talking about Lori Harvey and Ciara, and I'll just use them as examples, because Lori Harvey especially being one where she is seems like the poster child for pretty privilege. And, the thing about it is too, being a just average, everyday Black woman, in terms of appearance, I think there's a difference between, for example, with me, do I think I have some level of privilege within the Black community? Yes. Do I think I have some level of currency within the Black and African communities? Yes. The type of, I guess, so to speak, privilege that I think I might get is someone giving me a discount or buying me a drink or opening the door or, compliments here and there. But I am in no way am I getting flown to Dubai, right? I'm not getting, expensive, now mind you, I'm engaged, so I'm not even on the market. But my point is, even when I was single, right? No one was approaching me in the grocery store asking me if I wanted to hop on their private jet. So now, I guess what I'm saying is that, the truth is that many Black women are, let me back up, because again, this funnel, this sort of box is so small in terms of who has societal pretty privilege, who is pretty to everybody, in other words, right? Pretty privilege in many ways is you kind of have to be quote unquote universally beautiful to everyone, which I think is very hard. So people use Lori Harvey as a sort of prototype of this, and Lori Harvey is very, very beautiful. However, if you look at Lori Harvey, there's a lot of things like her hair texture. It's definitely not 4C. Okay. Lori Harvey has some, all of her, there's some, her features are not, many Black women have a wider nose than Lori Harvey. Lori Harvey is very thin. We know that many Black women are not that thin, but she's also very fit and muscular, which, many of us don't look like. So again, you have to think about, Lori Harvey might be somewhat of an anomaly, in terms of her looks. And again, a lot of that is still rooted in my opinion, a lot of texturism, a lot of featureism, a lot of, racism, and definitely fat phobia. You might look like Lori Harvey facially, but then your body might not be like that, right? Or maybe you have the toned body, but then facially you don't, maybe you have a wider nose. There's so many variations, right? And in many ways, having a big butt, having round hips, not only is it attractive to Black men, but also it is a potential signifier of femininity. Now, we all know that just because you have a big butt and big hips doesn't make you more feminine. But I do think there is an association, at least in the mind of a man, that look is a feminine look. It doesn't equate to personality. And I think I'm going to do a whole video about that too. But, so again, in this era we're living in, we're living in such an era where a lot of Black women are talking about soft life, talking about being more feminine. All of these things are sort of coming to the forefront. We want that. We want the anything associated with femininity. We're trying to cling to it. And again, body privilege, this idea of changing your body to fit that, and now a lot of that has to do with, unfortunately, appeasing a gaze, which is, that piece of it is actually problematic. However, there is a strategic part, if you want to, again, because a lot of it goes back to not only currency within your community, not only power, but also agency and options. And this way in which Black women can potentially open up their options within their community. Now, this does not feed into the conversation about like divesting from Black men. That's a whole nother conversation. This is more, what I'm saying today has more to do with Black women who are interested in dating and being with and married to Black men. Now, if you want to divest from Black men and go outside the community and date white men and have white men complimenting you, then the body privilege thing, that's a different type of body privilege. That might be like you needing to lose a ton of weight and have a super toned body privilege, which is fine. But that is not the type of body privilege I'm talking about. The kind of body privilege I'm talking about is the type that, will cause a woman to go and get a procedure done or various procedures done to make her body more curvaceous, to appeal to Black men and men within her community, to again increase her quote unquote desirability, currency, and so forth. So what do you think? Comment below and let me know what you think the cost of all of this is, because there is a cost, right? Like, yes, is there value to, your body looking a certain way? Of course. But that doesn't mean that, there's also a cost to that too. There are also, it comes with something. Nothing is free. So when it comes to Black currency, the Black card, whatever you want to call it, comment below and let me know what you think about the ways and, what are the various ways in which this currency is being used? Is it worth it? If knowing that changing your body will give you more power or what have you in your community, is it worth changing your body, whether you do it naturally, whether you do it via surgery? And ultimately, what is the financial, physical, and emotional price? What are the financial, physical, and emotional implications of attaining Black currency? And again, this is the Black currency that nobody talks about, the Black woman's currency that a lot of Black women aren't really talking about, but it does exist. So comment below, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and you'll see me in the next video. Bye.